React 19 is out there and stable since last December. And here we are talking about React 19 features as part of the playlist React 19 with Code. In the previous videos of the playlist, we have covered all features of React 19 at a high level, what is React compiler, and a few hooks from React 19. Today, we are going to talk about another feature, more than a feature, I would say, another change that React 19 has brought to manage context. And this is called context as provider. If you are a React developer already, I'm sure that you have used context, you have used providers, you have used context hook and all these things. Then what's new? It will be the changes the way that we used to call the APIs for context, but fundamentally it remains same. So in this video, what we're going to do, we are going to build an app with the old API of context first, and then we are going to migrate that application using the React 19's API for context. This will be the right use cases because most of the applications are with the older version of React. They might be upgrading themselves to React 19 in future. So for them, this video will be very, very helpful. Whenever it comes to context, I like the theming part of it, right? Who doesn't like dark theme? Everybody likes dark theme today. So let's build an application with React 19, but first with the older version of the context API, TailwindCSS, so that we can change the theme of an application between dark and light. And after we implement this application with all the design pattern intact, we'll be upgrading this application with the new API from React 19, new context API from React 19. So are you excited for that? Great. If you like this video, please post a like, post a comment, and please subscribe. Where are you guys? Why are you not subscribing to my channel? I'm putting a lot of effort to create quality content. If you don't give support, I feel really, really demotivated. Please go ahead and subscribe. Let's get started to build this application right now. Before we start coding with context, let's take a high level drive on what context is. So the picture that you are seeing on my screen is the component hierarchy diagram of an application. Let's imagine that this is an application where we list down the number of books that you can view and purchase from a website. Now, the component that I thought of for this application goes like this. There is, of course, a root level main. Inside that main, there is an app. Inside the app, there is a book page component. The book page component has a header. There will be a search bar, and there will be a book list. The book list can have each of the book row where book information will be there inside book details, and maybe you have a toggle to mark a book as favorite or the feature book. So you can imagine this application in your brain whatever the way that you would like to. But the main point over here is how the data gets passed. If you need the book data in book list, and from there if the book data get passed to the each of the book row, you will be doing it through props. The main data for the books may come from an API call. You might fetch it on book page and then pass it as a props to book list. From book list, in book list you want to iterate that book array, and then you can create each of the book row and then the book details. Now imagine in this application I want to support theming. I want to support this application in both dark and the light theme. So it means that somewhere in the header, in the navbar, I want to have a button. Clicking on it, it can toggle to a dark theme. Again, if I click, it can toggle back to the light theme. So the information of the current theme that I am in, whether it is a light or dark, that cannot be passed through props because that information lies somewhere inside the header. The switcher of the light and dark remains over here. Now, if you have to pass that information everywhere through props, you have to somehow bring this up to book page. Maybe from book page, you want to pass it to book list, from their book row. What happened to the search? You might want to change the border color of the search control based on the theme you are in. So that means you have to pass it over here. But the mistake that you'll be doing thinking through props is your data now going in the reverse way. In React, we know the data should be unidirectional. It should flow unidirectional from parent to child. But in this case, you are thinking about breaking that rule. You are going to get the data back from header to book page, maybe from book page to app. If tomorrow something else coming inside app, that is going to miss the theme mode information. So definitely props is not the best way if you want to have certain information available on all the node of your component hierarchy, or at least a part of your component hierarchy. That's where you bring something called context, through which you can do data sharing. You can update the data based on whatever the action happening in any corner of your application, and the data gets updated in the centralized fashion, and you get that updated data everywhere in every component wherever you want to access. So that's the crux about context in React. So now is coding time. So hey, what are we going to build? We are going to build something simple because our focus is on understanding the context API and what changes React 19 has brought in. So the application is pretty simple. There is a header as you see over here, and the header is having a text called React 19 Context.Provider. It has a theme switcher at the right of it, and there is a content area which is having some text over here, then some link over here, maybe some icon over here. That's it. Now, what this application is going to be is like when you're clicking on this particular button, it's going to change the mode, the theme mode. So from light, it become dark. And when it become dark, as you see noticeably, that the color, the background color, the header color, the color of this particular section's background, foreground, all the text foreground is changing. Let me do it once again. Let me change it back to light again. As you're seeing now, it is gray. This one is dark black. All the text are in black. But if I go back to dark mode again, this become a slate color, this become a lighter slate color, and all the text are becoming white. That means we are able to manage both light and dark theme. And what we're going to use here, we're going to use React 19 and TailwindCSS. So we'll be doing some configuration of TailwindCSS and some code to make sure that we first create this application with the older context API. So let's go ahead and start creating a React 19 application first. You can always create a React 19 application using Vite and then install Tailwind CSS on top of it. Or you can use an existing template repository to create this application faster. I have one which is called Code in React 19. I have shared the link of this in the description of this video. You can go ahead, check out and use it. Either you can use it as a template repository from here, or you might want to fork it, or the best way of using it is just by using this command. So I'm going to copy this command from here, came to my VS Code terminal, and over here I'm going to paste this command. The command says npx digit a/code in react hash main, which is nothing but that particular repository's main branch. And after that, you give the name of the repository that you want to create or name of your project folder. So I'll give the name as context as provider and press enter. Is going to clone it over here. You will be able to see it right now. Yeah, context as provider, and it is done. Now I have this entire code base that is taken from that particular repository and sitting over here. If you want, you can push it to your GitHub. I'm going to go inside this context as provider, and then I'm going to install all the dependencies using yarn install or yarn. It will take a while and install everything. That's it. It is done. And the next thing I'll be doing is running it using the yarn dev command. Awesome. I'm running it using the yarn dev command, and it is running on localhost :5174. So let me come over here and say localhost :5174 because something else is running on 5173, which is default port. I'm able to see this, start coding in React 19, learn React 19, blah, blah, blah. So this is coming by default from that particular repository, which I've used to bootstrap my repository. The best part in the repository right now, I have Tailwind CSS configured, and React 19 has been set up already in this particular project. So now let's go ahead and start creating all required components, theme switcher, context, provider, everything, but in the old fashion. Though we are using React 19, but we'll be using the older context APIs, not the context as a provider, because we will see that as a migration path in a while. So the pattern that we'll be using, the design pattern we'll be using is first create the context, and after that we'll be creating the provider, then create a hook to make the context available, very well known design pattern, and then wrap the component hierarchy with the provider, and finally use the information from the context wherever needed. So that's basically the pattern that we're going to use. So let's go ahead and create a context first. To create a context, under SRC, we'll be creating a folder called context. And inside context folder, let's create a file called index.js. Over here first, let's import create context from React, then create a theme context from the create context, and finally export the theme context. So creating context, the first step is done. Now let's go ahead and create the provider. So same way under SRC, let's create a folder called inside provider. Let's create a new provider called theme provider because you're going to provide the theme information here. So theme provider.jsx. Inside this theme provider, what we'll be tracking for? We'll be tracking for the theme changes. And if the theme change happen, then what we'll do? We will be adding a class called say dark in the document body level. So how things work basically over here is like based on which theme you are in, if you're in the dark theme, a dark class gets added to the body and then will be defined the definition of the dark class in the index.css file in a moment. Then we'll take the help of Tailwind to honor that dark and the light mode when we are going to write style for our component. So that's how the things are stitched. So first is in your provider, you make sure that you have a theme change state, and on that theme change state, you will be able to add a dark class in your document's body level. So first, let's create the component. As we know that our provider will be wrapping the component hierarchy, so it should have a children. That's why we have passed this children over here. Now we need to manage the state whether the theme has been toggled or not, whether theme has been set or not. So in that case, we have to deal with the state. Then we need something called useState from React. So import useState from React. Now let's create the state const theme comma set theme equals to useState of false. What does it mean? That initially there is no theme has been set, no theme change has been set. So it's a light theme basically. And then after that, we are going to have a function called toggle theme. So const toggle theme. Inside toggle theme, we have this theme state, right? We'll be changing this theme state. We'll be just toggling this theme state. So we can do whatever the previous value of theme state, take that and just negate that value. So if it was false before, now next time when you toggle, it will be true. Next time again, it will be false and so on. And after that, on the document body dot class list has a function called toggle, and we can toggle a class over there. We'll name this class as dark. So far, good enough. Ignore these errors that you're seeing here. It's all because of the ESLint. We are going to fix them. After doing this, the provider has to provide something, right, to its component. What is going to provide? It's going to provide the current theme and this toggle theme function. Current theme to get whether the current theme is light or dark, and the toggle theme function toggle the theme from anywhere in your application. Usually you'll be doing from the header. All right, great. So let's now the JSX part of it. For this, we need something called theme context that we have created. So we'll be doing import theme context, and here let's do theme context dot provider. This is the older API and this has changed in React 19. We're going to see that in a moment. And through this, you can pass a value. The value that you're interested to pass is the theme, the current theme, and the toggle theme, the way you will be toggling the theme. I'll close this guy. And inside that, I will wrap the children. And then finally, I'm going to export this from here, export default theme provider. So this is done. So I think we are good now with this component, but still it is crying for one error because I have not done a props validation. So let's add a prop validation over here with the prop types. So import prop types from prop-types. And then we have this children as a prop, right? Just add a validation like theme provider.prop types validation for this children props that it has to be a node and it is required. So that's it. Our theme provider is ready. So as we have the context and the provider is ready, the next part is to create a hook to make this context available. Why do we need the hook? Let's see in code first. Under SRC, let's right click and create a new folder. Give the name as hooks. Inside this, we'll be creating a file called usetheme.js. In the use theme, what we're going to do, first we're going to import the theme context and then React's API call use context to make the context available everywhere. So use context is here. Now let's create and export a function called use theme. First, it will get a context using the use context and passing the theme context. Folks who are using React might be already knowing this, nothing new. And if context is found to be null, we can do a validation and we can throw a new error from here, say context is not available. Otherwise, just return the context. So what is the use of this hook? I would say this is a pattern that is good to follow, because wherever you need this context to take out the theme information, current state of theme, and the method to toggle the theme, you have to write this line again and again. You have to import this theme context, use context, and then you have to use theme context inside use context to get the context. And from this context, you will be finding out, you will be doing a destructuring, because inside this context, whatever the value that provider is providing, this theme and the toggle theme information is available. So these lines you have to write again and again wherever you need this theme and the toggle theme function. For that, you have simplified it with the design pattern called hook pattern, and you have created a hook. Great. So we made this happen. Now next thing, wrap the component hierarchy with the provider. Let's go ahead and do that. So the root file in our application is main.jsx. Inside that we have app.jsx. What I'm going to do inside app.jsx, I'm going to clean up everything. I don't need any of these things. Instead, I'm going to import something called a theme provider. And this theme provider is going to wrap everything that I'll be creating in my application. So my application is very simple. You guys have seen that there is a header and there is a content area. Let's create those two components first, and then we'll be importing those two components and use them under this theme provider as a wrapper. So to create the components under SSC, come here, create a new folder called underscore components. Let's create a component called content.jsx. Here is a very simple content component which has a div, got a h1, a p inside that are anchor. Basically, it's a heading and then a small paragraph, say learn React 19 with code, and there is an anchor which point to some YouTube video. That's it, the content component. Very, very simple presentational component. Now let's create header. So inside components again, a new file called header.jsx. A simple header component. What it will return? Of course, it is going to return a header. No doubt about that. Inside header, we can have a h1. Here we can write React 19 context as provider. And below this h1, we can have a nav. Inside nav, we can add any navigation item. Let's take ULLI. And over here, we'll be adding something called a theme switcher. A theme switcher is a toggle button that's going to toggle the theme for us. So let's imagine that there is a theme switcher. We'll be importing the theme switcher over here, and we'll be using this theme switcher from here. For now, there is no theme switcher. So export default header, and then come to app.jsx file, import header, and also import content that we have created, and then put this header and the content over here. Let's see the UI for a moment. This is what the UI is. This is the header, and then this is the content area. Still, there is no theme switcher, and still there is nothing about theming, though we have done as a building block, but we have not done the switcher yet. So this part is complete now. The last part, use the information from the context wherever needed. Now we'll be creating something called a theme switcher. We'll be using that inside the header component to switch the theme. Let's go to the code, and inside component, let's create a new file called theme-switcher.jsx. And here we are going to implement a lot of stuff. So the hook that we have created just now, this is where we'll be using. Now first, import the use theme hook. This is going to give us the current state value of the theme and the method to toggle the theme, right? So const theme switcher, a function. Now I can get theme and toggle theme both from use theme. See, this is the beauty of it. I don't have to import again use context, theme context, every places wherever I need this theme and the toggle theme. And let's create a function called handle theme. This is just going to call toggle theme. That's it. Now let's return a simple button. On click of it, we call this handle theme. Theme is true. Let's show a moon icon, means it's a dark theme, or show a sun icon, maybe a light theme. We can replace this M and S later point in time with required icons. That's not a big deal. Okay, here is an error. This parenthesis is going to come over here. Okay. Actually, we could have called the toggle theme directly over here because handle theme is not really doing much, right? That also possible. And then finally, we are going to do export default theme switcher. That's it about theme switcher. Okay, in case instead of M and S, if you are looking for an icon, what we can do, we can install this library called yarn add lucid react. As it is installed, it's going to give me a lot of icons. So from this, I can import the sun and moon icon and then replace this M with moon and replace this sun with sun. Fair enough? So we have the things over here. Now for the fun, let me do a console.log of this theme and go to the header file where we told that we'll be importing the theme switcher and use this theme switcher over here. Tomorrow you want to add more navigational item, please feel free to add them. I think our application is in a state. So let's go ahead and see that. So we have done this, use the information from the context wherever needed. We have used it in the theme switcher. And I can actually see this icon over here and it is toggling. The theme is not changing, but things are kind of toggling. If I open up my debugger and go to console, refresh, I can see false, toggle become true. So my toggle is also working. So the only thing that is left right now is to support the theming using TailwindCSS. For that to happen, I'll go to tailwindconfig.js file. Coming here, I'm going to add a dark mode definition. It's already there in the documentation, just a single line. You say dark mode : selector. And then I'll be going to index.css file and we'll add body.dark. Let's add a color which is like FFF. In dark mode, the text should be of white color and the background color I have selected a darker variation. Now let's go back to the app. Let's click on it. I see this happening. I see this changing. You see this? So theme started working. But did you notice when we are in the dark mode, this is kind of unreadable. So it means that it is just not about the background color. Now, using this current theme value, whether it is dark or light, we can take a control and control each of this element as well. Also, we might want to use some styling to place them properly, isn't it? So let's do that. First, I'll go to header.jsx file, and at this place, let me add a few class name. Flex, justify between, so that there is enough gap between the header and the navigation item. Give a P2. Then background, let me give the black color. And this will be the case when we are in the light mode, the default mode. But what happens when you go to the dark mode? We might want to change the black color so that the header stand out. Right now, the header color and the body color remain almost same when you switch to the dark mode because both are kind of darkish black color. So for dark, this is where the selector comes into play from Tailwind. We'll do colon and then we select a color that we want in the dark mode. We say BG slate 900. So same thing we have to do for the text as well. By default, the text is white because white is our default mode. And then when we go to dark, we'll make text gray, say 200. Okay, so we have handled now both dark and light modes, background and the foreground, the text color for the header. Let's go ahead and check that out if it is working. So this is dark and it is placed now at the right side. If I click on it, you will see it is changing, and this particular color is now not exactly black. It is like a slate color. You are able to see a higher grade slate color. Let's fix this guy as well. To fix this, we'll go to the content.jsx file, and this is the paragraph where we have to fix it. So by default, it is BG gray, but we can say that whenever you are going to the dark mode, that time make it as BG slate 600 so that it is readable. Now let's go ahead and check this out. This is the light mode, which is gray. If I switch, it becomes slate. Now it is much more readable. So that's your application, guys. We have created this application all with React 19 but older context APIs with Tailwind CSS. Now it's time that we understand what are the changes that React 19 is bringing, so that you don't have to use the older API and you know what are the API changes. So with React 19, now you will be able to use context as provider. What does it mean? When we were creating the provider, if you remember, we were returning theme context.provider from its JSX. So this was the provider we had created, theme provider, and you can see over here we used to do theme context.provider. So from React 19 onwards, you don't have to really do this. Using theme context here is sufficient. You don't have to do theme context.provider because in React 19 the APIs has changed so that you can have context as provider. That's the first thing. The second thing is about how we make this context available to everyone. For that we have created a hooks, isn't it? And in this hook we have used something called use context, a hook, and this use context hook use the context in picture, which is like theme context, to get the context out of it. Use context hook is something that you don't have to use in React 19 at all. There is a new API called use instead of use context, and it has multi-purpose usage. One of the use is to get the context, and there is another use that we'll be seeing in the next video, how it can handle promises. I'm sure that's going to blow your mind, that the way it handles promises and along with suspense, how you can achieve great things in React 19. But in this video, I'm going to show you one of the use case that it can resolve the context. So instead of use context, you are going to use the use API. Don't call it as hook, let's call it as an API. These are the changes that if you are handling context in React 19, first thing is you don't have to do context.provider to create the provider. You can just use context as a provider. We have seen that over here. And the second thing, you don't have to do use context. Instead of that, use the use API itself. The theme context.provider, the use context might get deprecated tomorrow. So it's better to start upgrading this code if you are upgrading your application to React 19. The documentation promises that there will be a code mod very soon, which will auto upgrade or auto migrate your older context APIs to new context APIs. Now with these changes, let's see whether our application works or not. We come back to the original state. So original state is working. Now I'm going to click here. I'm going to the dark mode. I'm going to click again. I'm coming back to the light mode, dark mode, light mode. So things are working great with the new API as well. Hey, so how was it, people? The intention was definitely to show the new APIs got added in React 19 or change in React 19, but I wanted to show the application ground up so that folks who are wondering about how this context API works, or you want to know how this context API works and how to build things using context APIs with or without React 19 context, you have that. So I hope you learned something new and I hope you learned something good. If that is the case, please don't forget to subscribe to tapaScript. Please do that. It means a lot to me, and give a like, post a comment how this video was. Next, I'm going to come up with the use API and going to show some use cases of use API in the context of promises, because in this video we have already seen one usage. So stay well, stay connected, be with tapaScript.